Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. It hit me during my last birthday dinner. The way my mom said Julia's name like it was a blessing, and mine like it was a punchline. I was 32, single, and had just landed a senior analyst role at a firm in Nashville. Six-figure salary, retirement savings, zero debt. And still, between bites of dry chicken and forced laughter, my mom leaned in with her usual smile and asked, "So, Laura, seeing anyone yet?" Not, "How's work?" Not, "We're proud of you?" Just that, a smile soaked in pity. My name's Laura Dawson. I'm 32, live in Nashville, and I've spent most of my adult life being the family's afterthought. My sister Julia, golden child. She got married right out of college, had two boys before she turned 30, started a bakery that exploded on social media. My parents couldn't shut up about her. Every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call, Julia this, Julia that. Me, I was the one they asked about men, not money, not success. Not the condo I bought at 29 or the fact I've been financially independent since I was 18. Just whether I'd found the one yet. And when I said no, my mom would sigh and say something like, "Well, at least Julia's giving us grandkids." Quick note, before we go further, where are you watching from right now? Tell us your city or country in the comments. Back to the point. I learned to keep my distance. Polite visits on holidays, quick phone calls, never longer than necessary. I showed up with gifts, smiled for pictures, and got out before the resentment hit too deep. Julia didn't rub it in, exactly. She didn't have to. She was always glowing in the spotlight while I stood just outside it, invisible. Then last year, her world shattered. Her husband, the charming, loudmouth guy they all loved, walked out on her and the kids. Just vanished. No warning. Took money from the business accounts and left Julia buried in debt and behind on rent. Her bakery closed within a month. My parents cried over it like it was their house being foreclosed. My mom stopped mentioning Julia's name with pride and started saying it like a funeral eulogy. I remember standing in my living room, holding the phone to my ear as my dad said, "She just needs time to rebuild." Like he was telling me to do something about it. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just started showing up. The first time I saw the duplex, I didn't say anything. Julia looked tired, her eyes dull behind smeared mascara, holding Eli on her hip, while Mason sat on a milk crate eating dry cereal out of the box. The front door barely latched. The kitchen window had duct tape over a cracked pane. She'd gotten the place fast. Something cheap, month to month. Our parents helped her move in, brought casseroles and hugs, and told her she was so brave. But when it came to money, they made excuses. Dad said retirement didn't stretch like it used to. Mom offered guidance, not checks. So I stepped in. First, I sent her the name of a decent lawyer I knew through a client. Paid the retainer without telling her. Then I covered her first 3 months of rent. Quietly, no announcement, no demand for thanks. One Saturday morning, Julia texted, "Any chance you could watch the boys for a few hours? Just need to breathe." I showed up 10 minutes later with donuts and juice boxes. That turned into a routine. Every weekend, I picked them up, drove them to the park, sat through the same dinosaur movies, helped with homework. Mason, who was 9, started calling my car, Auntie's spaceship. Eli, 6, insisted I was the best pancake maker in the world. I didn't do it for approval. I did it because they deserved better than what they were stuck in. And because Julia, for all her pride, never once asked me for money outright. She always tried to frame it like a temporary thing, just until the next client signs on or until the settlement comes through. Still deep down, I thought maybe, just maybe, if I kept showing up, my parents would finally notice. That they'd look at me and see more than a woman with a LinkedIn profile and no husband. But every phone call still circled back to the same garbage. "So, any new prospects?" Mom would ask in that syrupy tone she saved just for me. Dad, one afternoon while I was packing up Julia's groceries in her kitchen, chuckled and said, "Maybe it's time you gave those boys some cousins." I didn't even answer, just kept sorting canned beans and macaroni. I just paid for the lawyer, bought new shoes for both kids, and handed Julia a check to cover her utilities. And still, all they saw was what I wasn't. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't Julia. I could have stopped. I had every reason to. But I didn't. Not because I was some kind of saint. Trust me, I had my limits. But because walking away from those boys felt like punishment they didn't earn. and leaving Julia to flail in it alone, it didn't sit right with me. Not yet. So I kept showing up. Every Saturday morning, every dentist copay, every call from the school. Quiet, steady, invisible. That's the part people forget, how loud silence can be. It was a Tuesday night when Mom called, chipper and breathy like she'd just won something on a game show. "Big news," she said. "Come by tonight." "Don't make dinner," I asked. "Is this about Julia? Something with the custody stuff?" She just said, "Just come." "You'll be happy." I wasn't happy. I was tired. I'd worked 10 hours, skipped lunch, and still had emails I needed to answer. But something in her tone was off. Too bright, too rehearsed. So I drove over. When I walked in, Julia was already there with the boys, parked on the couch. My dad stood by the kitchen counter trying to look casual, and then there was the folder, red, thick, sitting perfectly centered on the coffee table like it was waiting for me. "Sit," Mom said, motioning me toward the armchair. "We wanted to tell you in person." I sat. "It's Julia's new townhouse," she announced, way too loud. "Isn't it beautiful?" She opened the folder like she was unveiling a prize on a game show. Floor plans, payment schedules, loan documents. I blinked. "You bought her a house?" "Well, technically we did the down payment," Dad said, arms crossed. "From the retirement fund." "It's a great deal," Julia added, eyes darting. 3 bedrooms, near the boys' school. "And now that the paperwork's in, we just need you to handle the monthly," Mom said, sliding the paper toward me. I stared at her. "What?" She smiled like she hadn't just said something insane. "It's really not that much for you. 32, no husband, no kids. And you've saved so much." They'd already signed. The mortgage was under my name, pre-approved based on my credit, my income. "You did this without asking me," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. "We knew you'd say yes," Dad said, like that made it better. "You're always the responsible one." I looked at Julia. She wouldn't meet my eyes, just stared at her lap like a kid caught stealing. "This isn't help," I said. "This is manipulation." Mom laughed nervously. "Don't be dramatic." "No, dramatic is signing legal documents behind someone's back." "Your family," Dad said. "You owe it to each other." "No," I said, standing up, heart pounding. "I don't owe anyone a damn thing." Julia opened her mouth like she might say something, but nothing came out. "You want to torch your retirement for her? Fine," I snapped, grabbing my keys. "But don't drag me into it and call it love." I walked straight out the front door, didn't wait for anyone to follow, didn't give them time to argue or spin it. My ears were ringing, hands shaking. The air outside was sharp and cold, but it felt cleaner than anything in that house. They thought I'd just roll over. That because I didn't have a ring on my finger or kids in the back seat. My life was free for the taking. I got in my car, didn't cry, didn't scream. I drove away before I burned the whole damn place down. I thought maybe the shock would wear off. That after I left, slamming the door on their little scheme, someone, anyone, would call to apologize. Admit they crossed a line, they didn't. 3 days later, my phone rang. Cousin Bree. She never calls. We'd barely spoken since high school, but her voice came through syrupy sweet like we were best friends catching up. "I heard what you did," she said. "Julia's your sister, Laura." I blinked. "Okay, and? You could have helped." "I mean, she's drowning." I hung up. That's when it started. The next day, my Facebook blew up with a vague status from Aunt Marla. Some people forget what family means the minute it's inconvenient. SMNH. Then came the texts from people I hadn't seen since the last funeral. "I thought you were better than this." "You're single with no kids. What exactly are you doing with your money?" "Not everything's about career and condos." Julia didn't say anything publicly, but her silence was a message too. She let it happen. She let the family tear me up behind closed doors and passive-aggressive posts while she stayed quiet, the tragic single mom in the corner. And my parents? Full offense. They didn't backpedal, didn't soften it, just dug their heels in. "We've done everything for you," my dad said in one voicemail. "And now, when your sister needs you most?" I didn't listen to the rest. They turned me into the villain because I wouldn't bankroll a house I didn't choose for a situation I didn't create. Somehow, I was the selfish one, the bitter one, the one who never understood what it meant to have real responsibility. That word, responsibility, kept coming up. Because I didn't have kids. Because I didn't wear a ring. because I didn't have stretch marks and an ex-husband and a sad little sob story to drape over my shoulders like a badge of honor. To them, my success meant nothing. I was just the fallback, the backup daughter. Be useful, Lara. That's what it boiled down to. And shut up while you're doing it. One night, I got a long message from Aunt Marla. At least if you helped with the mortgage, you'd be contributing to your family's future, instead of building a life that's only about you. I stared at that sentence for a long time. My entire adult life, I'd been told to be less selfish, help with the kids, be more generous, make time for family, be the bigger person, let things go. And I did, over and over again. But somehow, when I finally drew a line, I was heartless. So I started blocking people, one by one. Bree was first, then Aunt Marla, then all the cousins who sent snake emojis or vague subtweets or DMs with fake concern. I shut it down. My phone got quieter and my head got clearer. There's something kind of violent about reclaiming your peace, especially when people are used to having access to you. The worst part? Julia still hadn't said a word. Not sorry, not thank you, not even a half-assed explanation, just silence. So I matched it. They wanted a scapegoat and they picked the daughter who never needed saving. Too bad for them. I was done being their safety net. The envelope came on a Thursday. Thick, official, with my full name printed in bold across the front. I knew before I opened it that it was going to piss me off. I just didn't realize how much. Inside was a lawsuit, filed by my parents, demanding $470,000 for raising Lara Dawson. I read the first page 3 times before I even processed it. Then I flipped to the itemized breakdown. They'd listed everything: food, clothing, school supplies, a $15,000 line item for shelter and utilities, 1993 to 2010, another for medical care not covered by insurance. And this one, I'll never forget, $24,000, emotional support during adolescence. That's what they thought I was worth. A debt, a ledger entry, a walking invoice with a decent credit score, and buried at the bottom of the complaint, stated purpose: funds to assist in completion of Julia Dawson's mortgage. I sat at my kitchen counter staring at the papers, shaking so hard my coffee spilled across the counter. I let it soak into the corner of the lawsuit before wiping it off. They were serious. I called a lawyer that same day, Vanessa Clark, recommended by a friend who said she was the kind of woman judges didn't interrupt. When I walked into her office with the lawsuit in my hand, she didn't even flinch. Parent suing their kid, she said, flipping through the pages like she was reading a grocery list. Happens more than you'd think. Seriously, I asked? Entitled families. They lose control. They reach for the last thing they think they own. She looked up and met my eyes. Calm, sharp, unshakable. They have no case, she said. This is intimidation, not law. I believed her, but I still felt sick. It was one thing to be ignored, one thing to be the family's scapegoat or backup, or ATM. But this was scorched earth. They were trying to humiliate me into submission, drag me through court until I broke down and paid just to make it stop. I couldn't even explain it to people without sounding like I was making it up. Who does that? What kind of parents do that? I didn't tell anyone at work. I didn't tell most of my friends. I just handled it. Meetings with Vanessa, paperwork, bank statements. Every email we sent had to be perfect, every word measured. It was like living under a microscope while trying to keep breathing. At night, I lay in bed and ran through every memory. Every damn birthday party, school pickup, every time I'd done the dishes after dinner, while Julia got to run off and watch TV. I remembered how they bragged about her bakery to strangers while pretending not to hear when I said I'd bought my condo. They raised me, yeah, but they didn't own me. I'd paid my way through college. I'd never borrowed a dime after high school. I'd given and given and given, but it was never enough. And now I owed them $500,000 for being born. Vanessa was a wall between me and the madness. Let them come, she said. They'll embarrass themselves in court. Still, it hurt, in ways I didn't even want to admit out loud. No matter how calm I pretended to be, I kept hearing my mom's voice in the back of my head. We've done everything for you. Everything, except treat me like a daughter who mattered. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Beige walls, humming lights, everything too clean and stiff. I walked in between Vanessa and my grandparents, Harold and Susan. Grandpa held the door. Grandma gave my arm a squeeze and said nothing, just looked straight ahead like she had a mission. We were the first ones to arrive. Vanessa set her briefcase down and started pulling out folders like she was prepping for war. Then they walked in. Julia looked smaller in person than she did in my memory. Tired, pale, hiding behind her hair. She didn't even glance at me. She sat beside our mom like a ghost, present but silent. My dad walked in like he owned the place, shoulders back, smug like this was a meeting he was running. He barely looked at me. The judge came in. Older, calm, tired of everybody's crap. Perfect. My parents' lawyers started with a rehearsed statement about parental investment, about how they'd poured their resources into raising a child who now refuses to support them in return. He used the word repayment like they were a bank, and I was a skipped mortgage. My dad leaned forward. We raised Laura with every intention that when the time came, she would contribute to her family's needs. That's what families do. Vanessa didn't flinch. When the judge turned to her, she stood and said calmly, "My client has, in fact, contributed." Then she handed over the folder. Exhibit A. Laura Dawson has paid over $8,000 toward her sister's rent, $6,000 for legal fees. She's made over 40 separate transfers to her parents' accounts, totaling just over $18,000. All without being asked, all without being reimbursed. The judge flipped through the pages. My dad shifted in his chair. Then Vanessa went in for the kill. She also paid for school supplies, dentist appointments, and weekly childcare while working a full-time job. This is not a case of neglect. This is a case of exploitation, I looked over. Julia kept her eyes locked on the table. The judge asked my parents simple questions, one at a time, calm, direct. Did you pay for Laura's college education? No, my dad said. Did you co-sign her first lease? No. Did you provide financial support after she turned 18? No, he muttered. Why not? She was always independent, my mom cut in, like that somehow helped. She didn't need anything. But now she does? The judge asked, raising an eyebrow. My dad cleared his throat. She's in a position to help. Why did you choose to buy a home for your other daughter when she was already behind on rent? We believed it was the right move. Did Julia ask you to sue her sister? My mom jumped in. It was a family decision. So your family includes Julia, but not Laura? Silence. I didn't say a word. Just sat there, letting them hang themselves. Then Julia spoke. Soft, but clear. She doesn't have kids. I do. The judge turned to her. That's not a legal obligation, she said, or a moral one. The room went still. Julia shrank down like she wished she hadn't opened her mouth. My dad clenched his jaw. My mom blinked fast, pretending not to hear what was just said out loud. Vanessa leaned in and whispered, "They just lost." I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. But I felt something loosen in my chest, like a weight that had been there for years, finally shifting off my lungs. The truth was in the room now. No edits, no spins. They came to shame me and got exposed instead. We were back in court a week later. Same beige walls, same humming lights. I sat between Vanessa and my grandparents, calm on the outside, fists tight in my lap. My parents came in late. Julia walked behind them, head down, avoiding everyone's eyes like usual. The judge didn't waste time. She flipped through her notes, set the folder down, and looked straight at my parents. This case is dismissed. My mom gasped. My dad blinked like he hadn't heard her correctly. The judge kept going. Raising a child is a parental duty, not a loan to be collected on later. No one said a word. She turned the pages again, speaking like she was tired of this entire thing. Your actions here were not only legally baseless, they were disappointing, manipulative. You used this courtroom to punish your daughter for setting a boundary. My dad tried to interrupt. Your Honor, if I may? She raised her hand. No, you may not. I sat still, breathing through my nose, heart pounding against my ribs. The judge turned to me. You've already given more than most. This court sees no justification for your parents' claims. Case closed. She banged the gavel. It was over. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just exhaled. One long breath like something had finally left my body that had been buried for years. We stood to leave. Julia stayed seated, staring at the floor. My mom reached for her arm, but Julia pulled away. I didn't wait for them. Outside the courtroom, my grandma leaned close, wrapped her arm around mine, and whispered, "You were steady. You didn't let them rewrite the truth." I nodded, throat tight. That one line hit harder than any ruling. I'd been quiet my whole life, easy to overlook, easy to take from, but not anymore. This time, they saw me. A few weeks later, my phone rang. Grandma. She rarely called unless it was important. I stepped outside to take it, still in work clothes, still tense every time their number showed up. Your mom came by? She said quietly, crying. I didn't say anything. She asked us to give her part of the inheritance early. Said she needs to finish paying for Julia's house. Of course she did. I leaned against the porch railing and stared out at nothing. We told her no, Grandma said. She doesn't control the estate and she's not entitled to it early. That was never the plan. I swallowed hard. Was she upset? Not in the way you'd hope, she said. The tears weren't for you, Laura. They were for money. That part stung. Not because I was surprised, but because it still hurt to hear out loud. I just thought you should know, Grandma added. We don't blame you. None of this is your fault. Thanks, I said. I appreciate that. She hung up gently, like she always did. Not long after, I heard Julia move back in with them. She started renting out the townhouse, probably barely covering the mortgage. I didn't ask. I didn't check. The less I knew, the easier it was to breathe. Instead, I closed on a little house of my own. 2 bedrooms, old hardwood floors, a crooked fence I actually liked. I painted the kitchen sky blue, bought a used swing for the porch, and adopted a gray tabby from the shelter. I named him Dusty. He liked windows and silence, just like me. I blocked the rest of the family, every last one of them. No explanations, no warnings, just gone. I kept my circle tight. A few friends, coworkers I trusted, Grandma and Grandpa. That was enough. Then, quietly, Kevin showed up. He was someone I'd met through a mutual friend at work. Divorced, steady, no pressure. He never asked about my family, never asked why I flinched at doorbells or ignored unknown numbers. He just showed up when he said he would, took me to the farmer's market, made space on his porch for Dusty when he came over. We didn't label anything. We didn't rush. It was the first time in a long time I didn't feel like I owed someone just for being in the room. And that was the difference. No one expected anything from me. I was finally allowed to be a whole person, not someone's safety net. Not the backup plan, just me. The email showed up on a Tuesday morning. No greeting, no subject line. Since you now have space, Julia and the boys should move in. Let us know when they can arrive. That was it. No apology, no "how are you?" Just the same tone they always used, like I was a utility they'd been meaning to plug back in. I stared at it for a second, not shocked, not even angry, just done. I typed back, no. Any future messages like this will be considered harassment. Then I blocked the address. I shut the laptop and poured a fresh cup of coffee. Dusty was already curled up in the window, purring low like a little machine. Outside, the porch smelled like rosemary and basil from the planters I'd built last spring. My mornings were quiet now. They belonged to me. Grandpa came by later that afternoon to fix the porch swing. Said nothing about the email, just brought his toolbox and a thermos of lemonade like it was any other Tuesday. Grandma showed up an hour later with peach pie. Made it with too much butter, she said, like that was a flaw. They never mentioned my parents unless I did, and I rarely did. Last Thanksgiving, Aunt Marla apparently told my mom to shut up about me at the dinner table, said, "No one wants to hear it anymore." I smiled when Grandma told me that. It wasn't revenge, just closure. Sometimes I wondered what the boys had been told, if they knew the truth or just the version their mom needed them to hear. But I didn't chase it. I had my house, my swing, my cat in the window, and pie in the fridge. Kevin came by on Fridays and didn't ask for more than I had to give. This piece wasn't a gift, I claimed it.